growing part of the United States. And when I mean that about the old homes, I'd love to see the old homes stick around a little bit. My own home itself, I bought a lot of people might be familiar with the outhouse property on Corderville Road, which I purchased about 25 years ago, and I completely restored it back to the original condition. And that's what I'm interested in doing, and that's what I'd like to help with the Historical Society. I think with my years of 30-some-odd years of building experience in the home restoration, I might be of some help to the board, and also that I come from one of the oldest towns in the area, Dedham, which is a lot older than this here. It goes back quite a few years, and I've been interested in the older homes, and I'd like to continue on helping, and I think it can help the town. I've never been involved in anything in the town myself, but I think this might be something that I would like to pursue, and I think it can be a future assistance in the town.
Great, thanks for
Fantastic.
stepping up.
Yeah.
Any comments or questions?
It sounds like a great collaboration there, so very good. Thank you for stepping up.
Okay, thank you.
Just know that this is the Historical Commission,
Right,
and then there is also the separate Historical Society.
Right.
Which there's no appointment to, you can just join that. So this is for the Historical Commission.
right.
Okay.
All right, do I have a motion to appoint Mr., is it Barthe? Is that how you say it?
Pardon?
Barthe?
Barth.
Barth.
Yeah,
Appoint
E-
Mr.
E
Barth?
silent.
Okay.
I move that we appoint Alphonse Barth to the Historical Commission with a term to expire 8/30/2020.
Have a
Second?
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you for
Thank you.
volunteering, we appreciate it.
Now, A.J. Gemperline for the Historical Commission as well. I've got a lot of people here
We
tonight,
were
that's
missing
great.
people, so this will be good.
Hey, A.J., go ahead.
Hello, I'm
Thanks
AJ
for
Gemperline. I've lived in Ashland since 1985. I raised two sons here. I first lived on Fruit Street by the Warren School, and then now I live over off Winter Street, one of the most historical roads in town, from what I understand. I've always been interested in the history of Ashland. I even had a book somewhere that I read about the history of Ashland and told about the old summer camp that used to be off Cedar Street, and also told about the time when there seemed to be a firebug in town burning up all the historical buildings back, I think, in the 30s or 40s, something like that. But Ashland still has some historical buildings and old houses that I'd like to see if we can preserve them and preserve and let people be aware of the history in Ashland. And so I'd like to work on that, and I think I have a lot to offer.
Great, thanks,
Very
A.J.
good.
Very
Any
nice.
questions or comments for A.J.?
No, thanks for stepping up, AJ.
Thank you.
Yep,
We
and
appreciate it.
just to confirm, we have recommendations from the Historical Commission as well for both of these candidates.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Great, all right, do I have a
Very good.
motion to appoint A.J. to the Historical Commission?
Sure, I move that we appoint A.J. Gemperline to the Historical Commission with a term to expire on 8/31/19.
Second?
And thank you for stepping up.
Motion has been seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? None?
Okay.
Congratulations.
Carries.
Congratulations.
All right, so now we'll return, thank you all. So now we'll return to
We're gonna do
the
the
regular.
Regularly scheduled.
Yeah, do you want to do that now?
We should,
Well, let's
there's
do the,
other- let's
let's
do
the
these in
emergency
order.
fund,
There's a
yes.
reason.
Let's go back to, so why don't we do now the proclamation for the Ashland Emergency Fund? So, is that Rosemary? Anyone else here for the emergency fund as well?
Quite a few
They
of
should
them
all
here
come
from the
up here.
emergency fund.
Well, do you guys all want to come up? Oh, I see Terry's here, yeah. Oh, Nadine, okay. Who's that guy Ellsworth? He's here too. Okay.
Hi, Rosemary.
Folks, feel free to come on up and, if you like. Okay, she's gonna handle it, okay. Go ahead, Rosemary.
So I'm here with five fellow board members of the Ashland Emergency Fund, founded in 1987. We've got John Ellsworth, one of the founders, Nadine Nesbitt, Terry Weiser, Bill Gath, and John Trefethen. and myself as well, Rosemary Fedorchak. I chair the fund, and we're very pleased to be here after 30 years of service to the town.
That's great. So I don't, yeah, Yolanda, why don't you go ahead and read the proclamation then? Yeah,
I get to do this.
that's right.
These are the fun things we get to
Yeah.
do. Recognize organizations like the Ashland Emergency Fund. So this is the Board of Selectmen proclamation. Whereas Ben Montenegro, Director of the Department of Public Work, and Rich Giuliani, retired firefighter and member of the Board of Selectmen, recognized a need in the community. And whereas Ben and Rick decided they wanted to help those in the community, so they placed a wishing well at Sunnyside Cafe to collect donations. They decided that the donations collected would be given to Isabel Harrison, then Director of Youth and Family Services. And whereas quickly the donations filled the wishing well, which totaled $150. Very excited, they took the donation to Isabel, who was happy to receive them, but she explained that the need was much greater. And whereas Ben and Rick, disappointed by the information they received, they decided to recruit others. They contacted John Ellsworth and other volunteers and created the Ashland Emergency Fund. And whereas members and funding of the Ashland Emergency Fund have changed over the years, but the philosophy of helping others continues. And over the 30 years, they've raised and distributed over $1.5 million to people in need. Now therefore, we, the selectmen of the town of Ashland, do hereby proclaim Thursday, December 7th, 2017, as Ashland Emergency Fund Day. We urge all residents to make known their appreciation for the devotion to the residents of Ashland, and we will the members good health and good fortune. And it's signed by Carl Hackinson, our chair.
Well,
Very good.
congratulations.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
Oh, you're very welcome. So you guys do a great
We
thing.
should get a picture of it. Get a picture of all these guys here.
Diane, would you grab a picture of all of them?
Oh.
Actually, why don't we have them all come up?
Actually, yeah, why don't you guys come up, we'll all take a picture together maybe.
Yeah, let's go.
We have somebody who can take a picture
Yeah,
here?
Diane, let's take a
All right, thank you, Diane.
Thanks. 30 more years.
30 more years, yes. I do
Hey,
have to
before I take a seat, I just want to bring an update for the Halloween campaign that we
Sure.
ran just
Feel
in
free.
October. Kids in grades K through 5 raised $2,500 for the fund.
Wow.
And I
nice,
also just wanted
$2,500.
to publicly thank all the students and the teachers and the faculty and staff that make it happen. And I also want to give a shout out to the student who translated our instructions into a different language, which I believe is Portuguese. And if they're listening now, they're hired for next year. I love the
Very
idea
good.
of that.
Great.
Thank you very much for that.
And when is, before you go, when's the fundraiser, the auction that you hold? When has that been scheduled?
That is
I
to
always
be.
look forward to that, and I spend too much money
I
there,
know.
but that's
I
very
know,
nice.
you and I keep bidding each other up.
And that's a good, and that's a great event to go to. It'd be good to get more people to go to that. It's really a great fundraiser.
We're still discussing the details
Sure.
of what we're going to do for next year's fundraisers, but we'll
Very
keep everybody
nice,
posted.
yeah.
Thank you for
Great.
How
that.
much did the students raise again?
$2,500.
Great.
Thanks again for the proclamation, really
All right.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rosemary.
All right. The next on our agenda is the Lions Legacy Project, which I see Julian Doctor is here. Julian, hi, Julian, come on up. So.
Yeah, my name is Julian Doctor from the Ashland Lions Club. This is the 100th anniversary of Lionism, and the Lions International has encouraged local Lions clubs to donate a project to the town for the benefit of the townspeople. And our club came up with a number of different suggestions for projects, and we narrowed it down to some park benches. We had enough money in our legacy fund to fund 4 benches. And
Wow.
they came in 4 different colors, so we were able to purchase one of each color. They have, the selectmen have a picture there. They have the
Pass it around, yeah.
engraving in the back of the bench donated by the Ashland Lions Club. And we came up with 6 possible locations for the benches where we thought there'd be a need in town for a bench. One being near the post office. There is one there, but it's in pretty bad shape, and was placed there by the outdoor committee of the open space committee about 20 years ago, and it's in really terrible shape. And we contacted the committee, and they said that they would more than willing to have it replaced with one of our benches. So it'll be a location possibly there, one at the farmers market, one at Stone Park, possibly near the basketball courts where there's not a bench. One maybe at the new Nyanza Memorial Park, which is behind the
Great
old
idea.
high school.
Great idea.
And another location might be near the pavilion, between the pavilion and the kids spot. So we had 6 possible locations, and we have to narrow it down to 4. So maybe the selectmen could discuss where those 4 locations might benefit the people.
Before, Julie, is there a suggestion for anyone else in the town that maybe Julian should coordinate with as to the placement of these, or how would something like that?
It would really depend. I think probably the best course of action would be for you to decide which
Okay.
4 locations you want to put them in, and then I can check with the relevant department to make sure that it's okay.
Sure. Okay. So just as an additional note, you mentioned that this is the 100th year of international Lionism, but
Right.
the Ashland Lions Club is 50 years old,
Right.
actually, right?
We're celebrating
So I
our
think
50th
that's an
anniversary.
important
Right.
aspect here as well. So
Yes.
that's a milestone.
These benches are they're made of recycled plastic, and they're guaranteed or warranted for 50 years. So
All right, very
they
good.
will have to see what they look like in 50 years, but it's supposed to be warranted for 50 years.
Very good. So, you want input from us now?
Well, not necessarily now, but we'd like to place
What do you
these
guys
before the
Yeah.
ground, is too solid to
I
secure
like the
these.
Nyanza Memorial Park idea. I know that's still, I don't know how far along, I think there's
Well,
something there.
I'm assuming you're talking about the memorial site right next to the middle school? And
Behind the
right off
middle school, yes.
The glass,
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
glass
Yeah, that's
cover.
kind of a
I think
nice
that would be a
spot,
good
yeah.
location as well.
My only question about that is, was there damage done to the,
It was. I thought there
was it
yeah.
vandalism or was it tree damage? And I'm unclear as to what that was. So I guess my only concern there, I think it's a perfect location. It's such a beautiful spot. I think Dan Borelli did a
Yeah.
magnificent job of creating this piece of art, and it would be a terrific spot for it. My only concern certainly would be vandalism. That would be it.
Okay. Yeah, so we believe it was vandalism. Mr. Borelli has already started the process of replacing those pieces that were broken with new components that actually aren't breakable. So you wouldn't necessarily have to worry about vandalism to those.
Okay. And these sound like these benches are pretty indestructible.
They're very solid benches, yes.
Right. And would you anticipate having them secured?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, we'll
Yes, and
chain them to a tree or,
Or
cement them in,
Cement, yeah.
so they,
Okay.
can't
All
be
right, good.
removed.
Well, so, should we take this under advisement, or you want to tell Julian 4 sites right now?
Is it something that you're literally ready to install if?
Well, they were assembled and in my garage and ready to go, so,
Okay,
as soon as possible, if you could let us know
yeah.
what 4 sites you think would be best
My only,
placed at.
my only concern about kind of taking it under advisement, our next meeting isn't until
That's
January.
right, so we should,
So,
whatever we're gonna do.
You know, I'm offering some locations and we can, as
Yeah.
a starting point. And, the post office, obviously, I think the Nyanza spot, I think the 2 Stone Park locations, and I think the corner
4.
spot.
Well, that's 4.
But that's 4.
You can only have 4.
Oh, the
The
2
two
corner,
Stone
yes,
Park.
I'm sorry, the 2 Stone Park, the Nyanza, and I highlighted the wrong thing on my, so those 4 locations I would.
Okay. Anybody else?
No, I think the same. I think certainly the post office, certainly the Nyanza Memorial, and the kids spot and the basketball court. You're always seeing kids at the basketball court, so adding something there with the notation that it's from the Lions, it will let them know, and
Uh-huh.
hopefully get them involved and interested, and
Sure.
more visibility, but also a good place to have the extra benches.
Excellent.
All right. How's
Can I
that?
hold on to this, Doc?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
So do
Yes.
we need a motion to accept these as gifts? What is it that we need to
I
do
would
at this
I would
point
motion to accept it as a
All right.
donation slash
as a
gift.
donation?
All right, so-
And do we need to direct Julian to interact with anybody on staff? No, okay.
We'll do it anyway.
All
All
right.
right, do I have a motion to accept this gift?
So I move that the board accept this gracious donation and gift of 4 benches, park benches by the Ashland Lions Club to be installed at some date.
Excellent.
A second?
Second.
All those
Thank
in
you very
favor,
much.
say
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
Thanks, Doc.
No, passes. Thank you, Julie. Did you have a comment or a question, or just
I was just
should
gonna,
come up to the
I
podium?
was gonna
quickly?
comment that at last night's CPC meeting, the DPW director commented that he was looking to install benches at Stone Park.
Okay.
So perhaps coordinating with the DPW director to
Yeah.
coordinate what they were gonna do and what he's already planning to do might save a step.
Makes
Great.
sense.
All right,
Thank you.
Do you want to be chief? Or do the tax
The
part?
tax thing is really quick.
Okay. All right, so the next item on the agenda is we're going to open the continuation of the tax classification hearing, which we started, I think, at our last meeting. So,
Yeah, that is correct. Actually, you opened the tax classification hearing on November 1st. As part of the tax rate setting process, we actually have to wait until after town meeting to see if there are any appropriations are made. And then at the Board of Selectmen's meeting following that, you simply make a motion to close the hearing and sign the LA5, which we'll do later tonight. So
Okay.
purely administrative matter.
I move that we open the continuation of the tax classification hearing.
The second?
all those in favor of opening? say
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. The hearing is
Any
open.
other discussion? or-
So any discussion or, so we've already, the form we've already looked at, and I don't know if it's in our background.
It is.
Yep.
Okay, so, yeah, so this is what we looked at the last time, and.
Yep.
All right, any other discussion or questions about the tax classification?
Nope.
So I get a motion to,
I move that we close the tax classification hearing.
Second?
all those in favor? say
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, those opposed? No, all right.
And we'll collect the signatures
Yep,
after the
and
meeting.
I move that we approve the single tax rate and approve and sign the LA-5 as presented.
Second, do I have a
Second,
second on that?
yep.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Very good. Okay, so the measure passes. We now have a tax rate. All right,
That's it.
so do we need a motion to close it now?
We've
No, we already
closed it.
did.
Oh, we just closed,
We're all
okay.
set.
All right, now I think I'm gonna turn this over, we have a small item here, a proclamation, I understand, so I'm gonna turn that over to Michael.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is, obviously one of those bittersweet moments. A few months ago, actually several months ago, Chief Boothby came to me and indicated that he had gotten into his mind that, he might like to retire at some point soon. And so as things started, we got closer to the end of the year, he indicated that that was what his intent was to be.
Sorry, I'm just reading some of the chiefs he's worked with.
Yeah, some of the chiefs and town managers. We promoted, well, first of all, Scott has over 30 years, almost 40 years in the fire service, well over 30 years here in the town of Ashland. He's risen through the ranks, held a number of different jobs. What strikes me is when we promoted Scott from captain to chief, we were, Tony and I were a little, I don't want to say hesitant, but, we just knew that there was some growing into the role that would happen naturally. It happens in every time you promote somebody. So we promoted him in 2015, and I remember so much that, Chief, you were very, very shy and very, very hesitant to get to the microphone. And then I noticed that as time went on, a lot of that shyness and hesitancy disappeared. And then at some point, we're kind of like, okay, Chief, wrap it up. He's just going to be incredibly difficult to replace. under his leadership, the fire department actually saw growth for the first time in 30 years. We finally got to the point where we could put on 5 firefighters per shift. We made, some great investments in capital equipment, and it all happened under his watch and under his leadership. So we're desperately going to miss him, and I know Chief Poofy's going to miss those Monday morning meetings. I can, I see it radiate in his face when he walks in. It's just all joy. But anyway, we're going to miss you, Chief. So would you like to say a few words?
Sure, thank you. It is difficult to make the decision to retire after so many years. It's been quite a ride, as people say. I came over from Southborough, and I was a little hesitant at first to come to Ashland because, you're making a change in departments. You're at a department where your father worked. Now you're making a big change. But honestly, I can really say that I didn't regret any of it. I'm very happy. I had the chance to move up through the ranks, which was great. I think that's real important for a chief in a town to be able to pick that chief from the town, and that person had moved up from the ranks. So I appreciate that. As they say, you're only as good as your people are. My people are great. They've been great to me. The officers, the firefighters, anything that I've ever asked, from Captain Roby, from the lieutenants, and from the firefighters, it never was a hassle. It always was very easy for me to get things done. So I appreciate everybody on the department and the things that they did for me, by all means. But it was time to move on. It was, like I said, it was a tough decision, but I just figured I would move on and do something a little bit different, as they said in the paper. And the little bit different is to retire. I'm moving to the Cape. Excuse me. I bought a house a few months ago down the Cape, and I'm looking forward to spending, more time there than I was able to do. I'm sure my wife Marsha's definitely going to miss the tones going out at night and waking her up and all that kind of good stuff. She got used to listening to the scanner. It was a little tough at first, but she got used to it. Same with Jen. Jen got used to it with no problem. Let me include the dogs. They got used to it too with no problem. But honestly, it's been great, and I really appreciate the support from the town, from the support of selectmen, from the finance committee, the schools, everybody. It made my job a lot easier getting that support. So I appreciate everything that everybody did for me and made my job a little bit easier than, sometimes it can be.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we do the proclamation, is there anything people want to say? Yolanda, why don't you go ahead?
I'll go first. I had the opportunity to work with Captain Boothby before he became chief through some of the regional fire things that we were looking at. And as Michael said, he was always a little quiet. And then as he became chief, he certainly stepped up, and I really appreciate the leadership that you've given to our fire department and just the support and what you've done for this community. I am very glad that I got to know you and work with you. I wish you well in your retirement. Know that you will be missed here in Ashland, and you're always welcome to come back and help out. So
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm definitely looking forward to come back and visiting for sure.
Great.
I won't be a stranger.
But again, I'll repeat for the most part what Yolanda said. I think it's been a pleasure certainly to know you and to have contact with you over these years and to see certainly you move up through the ranks, and at a time where I think we've improved our public safety capacity in town. So I do want to acknowledge and welcome the men and women of the Ashland Fire Department. Thank you for being here tonight, and of course Scott's family as well. I don't see the pups. I really like those photographs, but
I think they would have talked more than me. Bark.
but if you need any tips on retirement, give me a call anytime.
I could use it. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. I just want to add that, when I started this term as selectman, it was great meeting you again after all those years, and I appreciated the clear communication, the flexibility, and your willingness to tell me about what was going on, and it was great. I'm sorry to see you go. I asked Michael to review if he really had to accept your retirement, and apparently the answer was yes. So,
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
Great, thanks. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
So we're going to do a
Yeah, and
proclamation.
thank you all for coming here. I see, yeah, we have a little proclamation.
It's my pleasure and honor to read this proclamation this evening. And a Board of Selectmen proclamation, whereas Chief Scott Boothby has been a valued and dedicated employee of the town of Ashland for more than 30 years. And whereas Scott started working for the Ashland Fire Department on July the 16th, 1987. And whereas during Scott's tenure, he has worked in many roles, including firefighter and a member of many special teams, lieutenant, assistant emergency management director, and emergency management director, training officer, captain, and chief. And whereas Scott has been a constant among the never-ending, this is the best part here, among the never-ending changes, including working for Executive Administrator Jim Somerville and 11 town managers, including Richard Gladstone, Paul Sharon, Dexter Bois, Hector Rivera, Dale Morris, Dave Thomas, John Petrin, Mark Purple, Jim Purcell, Tony Schiavi, and Michael Herbert. And whereas Scott has also worked under many chiefs, including Frank Carianis, Robert Cleveland, Michael Brogan, and William Key. Now, therefore, we, the selectmen of the town of Ashland, do hereby proclaim Friday, December the 15th, 2017, as Scott Boothby Day. We urge all residents and fellow employees to make known their appreciation for his devotion to the town of Ashland and the fire service. We wish him good health and good fortune. And signed, Carl Hackinson, Chair of the Ashland Board of Selectmen. So,
very good.
congratulations.
Thank you. Can we get a picture?
Yeah.
Let's
Yes.
get a picture.
Let's get a couple pictures.
I do want to note, this is one of the indications of the esteem in which Scott has held it. Jim Adams, our superintendent of schools, is here just to help say goodbye. I presume he's going to miss him. It's not the good, okay, thank you. I'll be there next summer, getting a photo.
You know, they have bike trails down there.
I know, they got a bike trail near there.
They have a really good one down there.
All right. Thank you, Chief, and good luck in your next phase of life.
Yeah.
So. All right. So, okay, we're now scheduled to do the presentation for the Upper Charles Trail. So, Phil's here, I see, okay. So, we'll just give folks a few moments to get set up here. Let's see. Thanks for coming. See. You ready to look at the presentation?
Yeah. People filter out, I guess. See, do we get both screens? Will it be on both screens?
Yes, they,
Will it be on each?
yep.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know why that's not coming up though. You told me it was good to go.
I think the last time I was here, we had trouble
the
getting
same
it on the
thing?
screen. Yeah, I forget how we fixed it, but.
It's, you have to do duplicate or something, right? Oh, wait a minute. There
Ah,
it is.
there we go.
Okay.
Good.
I just
So-
wasn't being patient.
How about
Suppose
if
we should
here?
probably-
No.
Can we see it up there?
On that one.
So we'll just,
Usually doesn't? No.
It's on
we
that
want to
one.
move Yolanda so we can see this.
I have a printout.
Oh, okay.
I asked Susan to print one out for me.
30 slides, you're not concerned about that, right?
What do you mean?
Well, in terms of time limits, are you concerned
No,
about?
I
Yeah,
think it's important.
Yeah,
Yes.
very good. Yeah, I agree, so. through. Okay, I think, sorry. I have to sit down. Okay, let me just do a short introduction for this. This is Phil from Goff, right, from Alta Planning Design. He is, the Ashland Upper Charles Trail Committee has spent several months and engaged Alta to do a study on the feasibility of the Upper Charles Trail route through the town of Ashland, and this is the capstone for that. And Phil will be presenting a summary of the report, which is gonna be available on the town website, I presume, at some point, is it there, if it's not there now. So he's gonna present a summary. There's only 3 members of the board here tonight, so I do not expect we'll take any formal action unless people really want to, but we certainly appreciate you coming in and making this presentation. It's good to get it on video so people will have an idea of what's been going on. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Phil, and
Great.
go ahead.
Should we wait for Selectman Mitchell?
Before
or-
you start, could this
Yeah.
get put up on the co-urbanized site? Is that something we could use, or not yet? It's not at that point yet.
We cannot put it up on co-urbanized now.
Okay.
I think we can put it up on the website.
Okay.
Right now, it's a link, just a link to the site, where does the report live? Or will it, is it on your,
I'd have to direct that to either
Josh.
Sheila or Michael.
okay.
Or Josh.
Okay.
Yeah.
So subsequent to this, at least, there will be a linkage on the town website to look at the full report.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so I'm gonna
Great.
let you go ahead, and I'm gonna move so we can.
Okay,
see
yeah,
this.
please,
You can
feel
go.
free.
Yeah, I'm fine here.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure and an honor to work with the folks here in Ashland, both the Ashland Upper Charles Trail Committee and with the Board of Selectmen and, the townspeople here who have come out in, quite high numbers to the public meetings. And it's been an 8 or 9 month process that's been very enjoyable and very interesting and has resulted in what I think is and I hope others think is a successful feasibility study. And in fact, after our analysis and hearing a lot from the committee and speaking to stakeholders and others, we have, in fact, determined that the trail is feasible. Doesn't mean it will be extremely easy in all cases, that there are certainly some challenges. But this is just this is the end of the beginning of the process, of course. That's an important thing, that this is not a final design. What we conducted over these really throughout 2017 was the feasibility study for an 8.3 mile trail that does route through some state and town-owned properties. We've tried very hard to keep as much as possible and off-road. There certainly are some short portions on local streets. We try to minimize that, of course. And we've really paid a lot of attention to the downtown and creating a loop and connecting into downtown. And again, this is an ongoing process that the town and the committee continue to work on. That $1 million a mile, that might sound a little bit frightening to people. In fact, that isn't beyond the pale for trails such as this, $1 million a mile. Just yesterday, or maybe it was a couple days ago, the Board of Selectmen in Belmont actually just approved a trail project, similar length, 8 or 9 miles for $29 million. So about 3 or 4 times more expensive than this one. So the trails, and the design and construction of trails really can run a real gamut. So I think that's an important consideration. So I'm gonna just do a quick, maybe a 12 to 15 minutes or summary of the process and the recommendations, then I'm happy to take some additional questions from the board. So as I know that the board members here and the 2 who aren't here came to some of the public meetings, you're probably somewhat aware of the process in which we engaged. Initially, we looked at many dozens of different options, all sort of iterations that were narrowed down then to kind of 8 key options that connected really through the town from west to east, from Hopkinton State Park over to the Dyke Trail. And when we narrowed down to those 8 options, we worked carefully with the committee and the town to finalize our 8 evaluation criteria in which we used to score all of the 8 options. And that score helped to inform some of the ultimate decision-making on the recommendation, but it wasn't the only thing. We, of course, took input from the community at the community meetings. Some community members actually came to the committee, Upper Charles Trail committee meetings and weighed in, which is important. And of course, we met with stakeholders ranging from the school superintendent to the school committee to the Conservation Commission. Met, of course, with the Board of Selectmen about midway through the process as well. So both this evaluation criteria and the scoring and that input was an important aspect for us to move forward with the recommendation. The recommendation, which is about a 8-mile route, again, that runs from Hopkinton State Park on the west side to the Dyke Trail. That includes a loop in the downtown area. And this, we feel, is the sort of best opportunity for the town to take advantage of a multi-use trail through the town that really takes advantage of connecting to the key destinations within the town, including downtown and the state parks, of course. That provides a good mix of public and private property because there is no sort of clean and simple rail line or abandoned rail line through the town. That was just the reality here. So all those things are really kind of factored into our recommendations that you see up here, which I'll kind of go through quickly kind of from west to east and just highlight some of the key aspects. To the west, the sort of western segment, we divide this into our kind of 3 areas. Western segment was all about finding the route from the Hopkinton State Park to the RTD development. There's multiple options. We know that along High Street and the Boy Scout area and the Big Indian property, we have multiple options there. We know that they're still under discussion, and that was an important factor in our recommendations that we had those alternatives. So we know that that's an ongoing discussion, so we won't get into what is specifically the preferred or not. But we know that that is kind of a key element to get from the state park to the rail transit district development, which sort of makes its way and the trail makes its way then closer to downtown and closer to Ashland State Park. So the central portion of the recommended route includes a loop. It's about a 3.5-mile loop, which I think provides a real nice amenity, given that the Upper Charles Trail ultimately will be part of a much larger 25-mile loop that's still, a number of years away. But if there is that potential for Ashland to have its own loop in the central portion, that would be a combination of off-road trail and some on-street links. But what's really nice about having this loop is you're getting, much sort of the best of all worlds, where the portion to the south connects to Ashland State Park, incorporates the side path along the MBTA access road, which is nearly complete now. It's mostly off-street, and it really would be probably the most scenic part of the Upper Ashland Trail, or the Upper Charles Trail through Ashland, but also links into the downtown loop, which is a key element to provide additional connections to the downtown and provide that economic development incentive and really enhanced businesses by providing more of an opportunity for people to walk and bike into the downtown area. So just highlighting a couple of features of the central portion. We've met, I forgot to mention before that some of our recommendations were certainly informed by meetings we had with DCR. Ashland State Park being, of course, state property, and meeting with DCR, we really had a good sense from their perspective as to what they saw was the most feasible part of the trail, routing through the state park and incorporating a really beautiful and scenic portion of the route that runs along the top of the dam, and then looping towards Main Street along Cold Spring Brook. Cold Spring Brook, it's about 2,500 miles in length. It's a significant wetland. Did I just say miles?
You said miles.
Wow.
I'm like, wow,
Thank you.
that's long.
Thank you for that correction. That's important. 2,500 feet in length, not miles. But it will be a quite scenic and beautiful 2,500 foot length, and allow people on these kinds of trails, people really want to get in touch with nature, to be able to see wetlands, to be up on an elevated boardwalk, be able to see birds, turtles, other critters in the wetlands. Doesn't mean it isn't without its challenges, but again, in our discussions with DCR, and it's been reviewed, the preliminary review by the environmental review folks there at DCR, and also in our conversations with the Conservation Commission in Ashland, I should say, it's definitely a feasible part of the project, but certainly will have its challenges related to permitting, but not impossible. And I think that will really be a highlight of the trail. And a very similar to another 2,500 foot length portion of trail, primarily through wetlands, state-owned wetland area along Alewife Brook, which is really in Arlington, is really a great precedent to look at. And clearly in this case, DCR permitted extensive lengths of boardwalk through that area. It's a very popular trail. I actually live about a half mile from this area, and that's my son there on the right, bottom right. But anyway, I know that this is a very popular amenity in the neighborhood for people walking, running, and cycling, and getting more in touch with the natural elements that are just on the edge of our neighborhood. So I wanted to highlight a few elements in the central portion, again, of that downtown loop. We really wanted to bring the trail users, allow them good access to the destinations at Stone Park and the businesses and library and town hall. There's also the opportunity, this is one of the only opportunities along the whole route to actually have a portion of the trail along a rail bed, which you see a photograph there that is adjacent to the Nyanza Cap, which I think will be another interesting feature in the trail. The downtown loop itself, other than that short portion of rail trail, mostly the loop in downtown incorporates on-street connections. There's only so much open space in the downtown area. So we really needed to look at on-street and what are the kinds of complete streets types of improvements on a handful of streets in the downtown could we incorporate in order to make the connection. So we have a mix of different improvements that range from a two-way cycle track, which is, you can see in the bottom left on Park Road. It's just, in essence, taking the head-in parking or angled parking on the right and sort of nudging it into the road, which is very wide roadway, and creating that space for two-way bike travel on the right-hand side in the graphic. Ranges from that to Summer Street, for instance, where there isn't the space for bike lanes in both directions or a cycle track. So in that case, you might have just a bike lane in one direction and shared lane markings in another. Another variation that we needed to look very carefully at was Homer Avenue, which we thought provided a good connection in terms of the overall loop, but there were certain constraints. And certainly one option for Homer Avenue could simply to be striping shared lane markings and making that a shared roadway. So that certainly is an option. But one of the kind of key goals of the project was to try to provide facilities from end to end that was comfortable for people of all ages and all abilities. Families riding with bikes or older people on bikes, people who are more novice riders. So as an option, that was really part of the recommendation of the report. We suggested that a short portion of Homer Avenue between Alden and the primary curb cut to a parking lot adjacent to the intersection of Homer and Central Street be considered as one-way traffic. And you can see in that graphic on the bottom left, that provides the opportunity to have fully striped bike lanes in both directions. Still provides all the access to the businesses between Alden and Main Street, but does require looking at a one-way connection just in that portion of Homer Avenue. So that was the one place in the entire alignment where we felt our recommendation really needed to make that tough choice and look at the real trade-offs between bicycle and pedestrian safety and access and what we consider very modest inconvenience for motorists. So moving further east, wanted to touch upon another couple of key areas in the section between downtown and then ultimately the east terminus of the Ashland Upper Charles Trail, which is the east end. You see that blue dot, the east end of the Dyke Trail. So we looked at a handful of options, and initially we studied the buffer zone that was to the right of or south of the Village of Americas, and realized there were some challenges there in many ways. But we needed to look at a connection to the high school and then beyond to the Eversource easement. So we looked at the town-owned cemetery, Wildwood Cemetery, and the opportunity to recommend snaking the trail along the far edge. As you can see, the trail line is at the far edge of the cemetery, really not seen by any adjacent, or not immediately adjacent to any grave sites, which we know is very important. And we feel that this could be a real nice amenity right adjacent to the Sudbury River for most of its stretch, finding that sort of sweet spot between being close to the river but not too close where you're getting into more significant permitting challenges. So that allows the trail to come up and up the hill and access the high school site, the high school campus site. There were certainly a handful of issues here that we needed to take on, and we met with the superintendent and the school committee to address issues of conflicts between trail users, especially on bike, and students, especially after school during event days. There was parking issues to look at, the opportunities for delineating between what's the trail area right of way versus what's the school property. So these are recommendations that are in the report, but really makes for a nice amenity that provides a real opportunity for high school students throughout portions of Ashland to actually ride their bike to school, which I know the superintendent in particular and many of the school committee members thought was a nice amenity. So those were some of the key highlights really throughout the alignment. That's really more from 10,000 feet. And again, this isn't a final design, but certainly an important part of our report and the recommendations was to just give a sense of the trail character and some of the features that ultimately will be part of the design as it moves forward, likely in a handful of stages. So the one thing that is clearly recommended from end to end of the trail, that there be sort of a consistent 10-foot width to the trail, other than the few spots where there's some on-street improvements needed, bike lanes, et cetera. But that there would be a very differing characters of that actual trail within that 10-foot width. So some areas, paved portions are likely, natural surface portions in more environmentally sensitive areas would likely be a significant stretch of the trail. And then there would be boardwalks primarily along Cold Spring Brook, which is going to be a few thousand feet potentially of boardwalk, but there's a few spots in 2 or 3 other areas where boardwalks are likely. And then what's also a feature in parts of the trail alignment that goes relatively close to any properties, residential properties primarily, there is landscaping and fencing and other buffer recommendations in the report to ensure that there's not only a good sense of privacy for those who are living near the trail, but actually adds to the aesthetic experience for those walking and cycling on the trail as well. And then finally, it's the last slide here to kind of wrap up the trail character. An important part of this trail is the reality that it's crossing a handful of roads. Some of them relatively busy roadways like Cross Street or High Street, Main Street in one spot, Cedar. And in all those places, we've have some general recommendations and guidelines for how to design that crossing, primarily with a what's called an RRFB, a rectangular rapid flashing beacon that is actuated by a pedestrian or a bicyclist to press a button, and flashing lights along with the signage and the markings in the roadway. It's really intended to make those as safe as possible. In one spot where the Dyke Trail meets Route 126, we advocate for potentially upgrading that RRFB to more of a pedestrian hybrid crossing, which actually creates a red light. It's something that as the entire Upper Charles Trail loop is developed and the demand increases, that might be something that could be considered along Route 126 crossing as well. So, but, you know, overall, the crossings are a very important part. If they're of any trail alignment, if they're not well designed, it becomes a weak link in the entire system. And that's was covered in the overall recommendations in the plan. So that's my brief summary of the alignment, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments from the board or from the town manager.
Oh, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phil, for that. I just want to note, well, it's been a pleasure working with you and the rest of the staff at Alto over the past, what is it, has it been 7 months, 8 months, putting this together?
Close to 11.
11
I think
months.
we had our
Longer
kickoff
than-
in January,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, mid-January.
Well,
so.
thank you for that, and I do want to
It's been a-
note that many members of the Ashland Upper Charles Trail Committee are here in the audience, and thank you for your efforts this is, really represents about at least 2 years, 3 years, Joel is telling me. Today is 3 years since the selectmen appointed the committee, and it's been, people have spent many hours on that. And I also want to thank Sheila Page, our town planner, is here as well, so thank you for that. So I'm gonna open it up now for questions and comments from the
Sure.
board, I think, and why don't you go ahead, Steve?
Sure. So, you know, thank you, Phil. I think I've attended most of your forums, and, you know, they've always been well done. You know, it's a very impressive document, so thank you for that. And, you know, I found the forums to be very enlightening in a lot of ways. And needless to say, there's a ton of challenges here that are presented to the town in, you know, I think all of the sectors that as you've laid it out. So, I believe at this point, the board will probably go into a retreat at some point to kind of review this, digest it, and then really start to, I think, give some guidance to the process as we move forward, because it's a ton of stuff to digest at this point, and plus, you know, obviously challenges with access to properties and so on. So, but, you know, thank you for your work.
Yolanda?
Well, I think it's important to give you some feedback now. I mean, I think what Steve said is correct. We as a board will determine, but I think, you know, I have a couple of concerns about the plan as it's currently presented. The first is turning part of Homer into a one-way. I don't know how realistic that is in looking at it and looking at the path, and you know, you've determined some places will have shareable road, but then one portion of Homer becomes one way so that it has a dedicated bike path.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, you know, the experience of what you're showing, and granted, it's going through many different areas, so, you know, on Summer Street, you have that dedicated, not on Summer Street, the street next to Stone Park, you know, you have the dedicated, but then on Summer, you go into the, you know, the bike path and the shared, and then on Homer, you're trying to change. I would think that it might be better to look at how can we make the experience to the rider somewhat more consistent. That's not always going to be possible because some of the streets are wider, some of the streets are narrower, but I think as you look forward, and certainly for the committee to discuss from this meeting, it's something to think about, that if I get on the road and I'm currently in a shared bike path, it's an easy transition to something else without it being, okay, now I have to look for this.
Yeah.
So that's just something I would recommend. The other concern I have is that as we look at this trail, we know that at least one portion is going through a piece of property that, through discussion with some of the owners, they're not interested in having the trail go through it. So to show that as the preferable route, but knowing that that's not really feasible, I think, you know, you need to look at your other alternate routes and decide, okay, we know this can't happen, so let's look at that. The other couple things that I think we need to first at is, you know, DCR does support this going through the state park. There was an event about a month and a half ago through MAPC and Metro West Regional Collaborative calling the Landline Project, and DCR was there, and they were very supportive of it, of our trail going through the state park, so that's a good thing for us to remember. We need to look at not only looking to the town to support this from a tax perspective, but we need to look at creating a Friends of the Trail group. And I think this is not just for you, but this is for the committee and for the community at large, looking at I look at what Holliston has done. Now, it was very easy. They had an empty trail, but they created a Friends of the Trail group, and they've taken 10 years, lots of volunteers, lots of fundraising to create what they have, and they are now just about done. The last thing they have to work on is the 8-arch bridge. And again, they're doing it through fundraising and getting people involved in making it a reality. So, I mean, a committee that we've created is the first step, but getting other people involved to make this a reality, I think, is important. And just the last thing I want to say, again, following up on what Steve said, we now need to determine what the next steps are. We're going to be looking at doing that, talking to the committee, and seeing how we want to move this project forward. But thank you for your work. Thank you to the committee for their work. I, too, was able to attend just about, I think, all of the presentations. The community that was involved, so many people came out and gave their feedback, and I think that's what makes projects in Ashland work, is when the community comes out and gives us their input and their feedback. So thank you to everyone who's been involved in this. It's been a great project, and I look forward to helping moving it forward somehow.
And for those, and I know you've already looked at the report, but for those who haven't or plan to soon, there is that at the very end. Of course, there is that next steps section, which is a critical part of the entire report, is to look at just those last 2 pages. So.
Very good. Michael, did you want to make some observations?
Sure. First of all, I think this is great. I think you guys did a great job. Interestingly enough, I think the way it's presented in the slideshow format made it more complete for me, but at the same time it was more digestible and more simple. So it kind of...
Than the whole report.
Yeah, it almost brought things into focus a little bit better. I think just for the board's benefit, I think one of the, as you said, Yolanda, we have heard unequivocally, and I received correspondence earlier today, that, this first leg in the Ashland West section is not going to be an option by the landowner. So fortunately, you already have alternatives that have been laid out, and that's good. But again, I think for the board's benefit, your primary considerations and where you're going to have to make a determination on moving forward is whether or not you allow the path to go along the outskirt of the cemetery and Homer Ave as the road commissioners. So I think to the extent that we can compile a few of those big discussion items and put those together, and the board, whether through a retreat or a regular meeting, have a discussion as to what you want to do with that. At that point, it does look like you have alternative options for each of those pinch points, maybe. Then you know what alternatives you will need to implement, and then you actually have a list of which properties are publicly held and where you might need to have permission, and then which properties are privately held, and then where we would need to begin discussions. So once the board has a idea of what the actual route is after those discussions, you can endorse it and then entertain, you could have us, collectively work on negotiating with those properties and then start seeking the funding.
And I think the other key point to that is, once we determine what is the most feasible, practical, affordable route, whatever that ultimately is, how does that coordinate with any complete streets programs that we'll be implementing as well?
Right.
You have mentioned complete streets as part of this, but that's, we're looking at obviously other parts of town to incorporate that. So how does that all tie together?
Right.
I guess the one, well, before I make my comments, Joel, did you want to make any short statements to the committee, or this is? Okay, this is an unusual event here, when Joel's actually.
It's Phil's last day, and I thought.
Okay.
I didn't want to interfere.
All right, so we should.
Not going to die. But.
So, what did he say?
He's not going to die.
Not my last day on earth.
Right. Yeah, so I think one thing, and I appreciate the comments, and I think you laid out a good path forward in terms of, the one thing I would suggest to the board, though, is that this is a kind of a general report with different alternatives, and I think I would say, and we should, we're going to undertake an extensive meeting, but I would also suggest that we can look at it as a concept fairly straightforwardly. Do we kind of endorse this effort or not? And I mean, the select board started this whole process, so I think the answer to that is yes. But I think also part of it is, do we endorse at least a general approach without maybe, you know, there's a lot of technical issues here and a lot of things that are not fully answered.
Right.
But I think we should consider endorsing the report as a whole, with not saying that everything has to be exactly this way, and that understanding as we go over the next several probably years, that there will be changes, and when people really have to do something, it's likely to turn out differently. So I would just suggest that we take it under advisement in that sense, and, you know, direct the staff to move forward as Michael is suggesting, so. that would
Well,
be
if I
my
can just
take on it.
make one comment on that, and I think it is important, and I remember maybe one of the first meetings, Joel, that was held way back when. I don't even know if the committee was formed at that point in time, but it was at our community center, and I remember that all of the other communities in the Upper Charles group were there, and one of the selectmen from Milford was there. And he spoke about the importance of having the, whatever it was, the board, the council, the mayor's support in this. And I think it's safe to say that the board, you know, I'll speak for myself, but I, as Rob said, I think it's fair to say that the board is very much supportive of being part of this Upper Charles River Trail connection. What that is ultimately to be determined, obviously, but I think that's a fair thing. But I think it's important to note that the board is supportive of the concept and moving forward.
Very good. All right.
I would second that. I think, you know, again, not speaking for the whole board, speaking for myself,
Right.
I definitely support the idea. I think, you know, if we can make this happen and make it a reality, the idea of connecting to the whole trail and then connecting out to other parts of the state, I think would be a
Yeah,
great thing for
okay.
Ashland to get people here for different things. It's just, you know, it's not just to offer a bike trail and a way for people to walk around, but to help our economy and to get people to come to Ashland. I
Exactly.
think
Right.
there's so many positives about having a bike trail here in Ashland and having this multi-use trail. It's just doing it in a way that we can afford and support and get the community
doable.
behind.
Yeah, very good, thank you for that. And I do have to say, there was, seeing those actual, the pictures and the drawings that showing what it could be, I found that exciting. That's, you know, I did want to note that it's not just dry, you know, maps and charts and stuff, but you actually see people and those things happen in Ashland. That's exciting, so, thank you, Phil. Any further?
Phil, can you please mention the funding opportunities? I don't want the residents to leave after this presentation thinking about, you know, multi-millions of dollars out of the town's budget. What are the opportunities?
So it's been suggested that Phil talk about some of the funding opportunities in constructing the trail. So if you want to just take a moment or two to briefly review that.
Sure.
I think that'd be good.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, there's gonna be sort of a blended mix of funding, you know, with trails like this. It's not so typical that just, you know, local funds very rarely pay for a whole trail, first of all. And that's always a concern that local taxpayers have, is like, will our residential property taxes go up? So that's a very rare thing. So that's sort of one thing that people should recognize. And usually there is a mix of funding sources. There's DCR does have, through its recreational trails program, there are grants. They're not large, but they can pay for some portions of the trail. There are portions, the on-road portions in the downtown, that can be paid through MassDOT's Complete Streets program. There will be likely the need for the private fundraising, as Yolanda mentioned, through the 501c3, the Friends of the Trail group that is recommended to be started as well. But, you know, a good chunk of the project is likely will need to go through the TIP process, which is the state's transportation improvement program, in which, you know, federal funding, state funding comes through MassDOT, comes through the MPOs. In this area, it's not CTPS, it's the Central Massachusetts Planning
We're District
MPO,
Three.
Yeah.
MHEC, we're District 3.
District 3
MPO.
process that a large chunk of it is likely to come through that, and that's potentially a multi-year process that requires final alignment to be settled upon and a more detailed cost estimate, so that chunk of money can be placed into the TIP and then gone through the process and allocated by the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, locally.
And the MPO has shown indications that if there's changes in funding, that if there's a project that needs $1 million or $2 million, they're willing to look at putting in. I think the trail that just went over Route 27 in Natick was a project that was only recently put on, and
Yeah.
because they had some extra funding, they were able to get that
Yeah.
project done, so.
And there's a lot of
ways to
momentum
do it.
through the landline that you had mentioned,
Yes,
through
yeah.
MassDOT, DCR. There's a lot of momentum in the state for implementing
kind
and
of
funding
project,
trails.
yeah.
So it's very exciting, and linking them all together is
Yeah.
really critical.
Phil, any idea, you mentioned Belmont and $29 million 8-mile trail. Any
Yeah.
idea what
they're
components
gonna-
made up that funding?
I'm not sure. They just went through, they're at roughly a stage that you're at, where they, a consultant finished up a feasibility study, presented it to the town, and it was adopted yesterday. I don't think they've raised any of that money yet, so I think the consultant is probably answering a similar question. Well, you're gonna have a mix
How
of
are we gonna
funds
pay for
coming
this?
from
There
MassDOT,
you go.
Yeah, right.
you know? But where they come up with that money, and I think that they have
They
either
can
an
ask Mitt
underpass
Romney,
or a
right?
bridge that's involved, that is a big chunk of
Yeah.
that 29 million, so.
Great. Well, thanks, Phil.
Yeah, thank you.
for
Thank
your-
you,
Thank you very
Phil.
Again,
much
it's
for
been
your
a
work on
pleasure
this.
working on this
Thank
for
you.
this year.
Great,
Thank
thanks
you.
for that.
Appreciate
And the presentation, the full report will be available on the town website
Yep.
shortly. And is
I
your,
think the-
is your PowerPoint gonna be up there as
That would be
well?
good.
Do we know, or?
I think so.
Okay, good. So that's good. So I urge people to check it out and take a look at it. Anything further on this, on the trail? Yes. Well, come on, you have to come up to the microphone, Tony.
I know Tony Lewis, 34 Washington Ave. Will this report be given to the consultants that are doing your downtown initiative? Because they can help us,
Yes.
Yeah.
because it's very important, because they might have ideas too, so
Oh, they
please.
do.
Yeah, so please incorporate this in
Yes.
there
Definitely.
and
That's
meld it
another
together
resource,
nice.
That's the next
right.
step.
All right, great.
Thank you
Yeah,
very
we
much.
Thank you.
Part of it.
Tony's also a member of the
Oh, yeah.
trail committee. Thank you, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
All right, so I think we're gonna move on. Thank you. That was a very good presentation. So I think and thank you to the members of the committee who came
Yes, thank you.
to witness this and all your work. I think we will do public participation, the long-delayed citizens' participation. So is there anybody left that wants to do citizens' participation? Mark's moving kinda slow. I don't know. Okay.
Okay,
All right, Mark, I think you're ready to go.
I'm ready to go. I'm concentrating my thoughts. Oh, it's not these. Good evening.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
Ah, now 20 minutes, not bad. I would like to say that the town is now active and forward-thinking town. Economically wise, we're starting to see things happen. This is town manager, and to Beth Reynolds, who has talked to me, we are now working on the Good Merc report. And to the retiring Chief Boothby, you're lucky you'll leave, because I'm still gonna be around, they're gonna see me more. The new year comes, new things to talk about that's gonna hopefully happen. I would like to say that it's worth the time to become more active, which I have been. And it's worth the time to come into the building here, to the town hall, to talk to the people, to get good things from the right people. I've been talking to the backgrounders, and the very last selectmeeting we had that Kyle did at the very end was one of the best town public reasonable things that could happen. But now, 2018, we hope we don't need that to have in the back of the minds. I'm positive, I'm excited, I may not sound it, but now, as people say when they greet each other, Happy New Year, good health and happiness. for myself. That's me.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Happy holidays.
Thank you, Mark.
Happy holiday. Okay. So, I think we'll go to old new business.
We want to do the
Wanna
consent.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Agenda?
I skipped the consent.
Yes,
So
you
the
did.
consent agenda, I will read the consent agenda.
No,
No, you don't read the consent.
No.
It gets
no,
voted.
so
Okay.
you just.
So
we
I
wanna-
will forego the
just-
reading of the
but we're
consent
removing two
agenda.
things.
So removing 2 items, Rob, and then we'll.
No, I know, I understand. Well, I know we're removing the November 1st, 2018 executive session minutes, and what's the other item?
The November 14th regular board meetings.
Okay, so we're also removing the November 14th, 2017 regular session minutes. So, do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
No one wants to take anything? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, the consent agenda passes. Vote of 302. Okay, now we're going to old and new business. Okay, so Michael, you want to talk about the Cadillac paint property?
Yes, I do. So as you are aware, at town meeting on November 14th, town meeting voted to take the Cadillac paint property on Elliott Street. As the first part of that process, what the board needs to do is to notify the parties involved of the board's intent to take the property. So what I'm asking for tonight, it's a fairly lengthy motion, is for you to go ahead and authorize that notification. Just in terms of timeline, we're actually working on the settlement agreement with the Department of Environmental Protection. If you remember, there's a lien that DEP holds. We have finalized that agreement. We should have next week that paperwork for you to sign, which would clear that lien. We plan, after this notification of taking occurs, after the vote tonight, we plan on having that hearing about the takings at our meeting on January 17th. After that, we have 30 days to enter the order into the Registry of Deeds. At that point, we can actually put the equipment on the site and start demolishing the buildings and remediating the soil, which we expect to take about 6 weeks. So, optimistically, because we're actually working right now on getting those contractors to do that work, so we're doing that concurrently with some of this administrative work. We hope to be finished, like I'd said at town meeting, in the spring of 2018. So, but again, just tonight, I just wanted to give you an update as to what the process would be. Tonight, all I need is a motion to notify the parties of the
So
intent
that
for
whole
taking.
long thing?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
So, hold on, before, any questions or discussion before
Pretty
the
straightforward.
No, I
volunteer
think
reads that motion?
The only thing is, if Ed Hart is watching, you know, it's been a long haul, but
Yeah.
Yes,
we're
thank you
getting
for his
towards the finish line, so.
Very good. All right, Yolanda, you
Sure.
want to do the motion? Okay.
I move that the Board of Selectmen hereby notifies the following entities of its intent to issue an order of taking of 409 and 413 Elliott Street. The parcels to be taken are shown as Lot B1 on Land Court Plan 16860B and Lot B2 on Land Court Plan 16860C respectively. The purpose of this taking is an exercise of the town's power to protect the health and safety of its residents by remediating the extensive hazardous environmental conditions known to exist at the property and thereafter secure it for park and playground purposes. This notice is provided under General Law, Chapter 79, Subchapter 5C. The Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on this matter at 101 Main Street, Ashland, in the Board of Selectmen meeting room in Town Hall on January 17th, 2018.
Second?
Second on that. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes 302. All right. The next item is Oregon Road update.
Sure. I also wanted to give you an update on the property purchase off of Oregon Road, what we commonly refer to as the Niccolo property. Again, town meeting voted for the board to execute the purchase and sale on the 14th. I have met with bond counsel to talk about the process moving forward. We hope to have all the documentation to bond council by the beginning of the year. We should have that note sale for you to sign at the meeting on the 17th as well. So the 17th is shaping up to be a pretty productive meeting, if you look at it from bureaucratic angles. And then we should have the money in hand January 25th, and so we can close shortly thereafter. So after that point in time, we'll record the deed, and the property will be the town of Ashland's for the purpose of incorporating it as part of the town forest.
Right.
Nice.
So,
Very nice.
Great.
All right, the next, the next is license renewals, and do we have the, I'm looking for
We
the
have
list.
the road with all the
Does
motions.
someone have the list?
Yeah,
Is that-
we're
But
good.
they're in the motions.
We have
as
all the
well.
motions. Susan was kind to,
So
yes,
you're
I
on-
see.
Make it very
Well,
easy.
So it's all right here.
Well
So do
done.
I have a volunteer to do the motion?
Well, we're gonna.
We're gonna
we all-
alternate.
We're gonna
Yes,
alternate
as
each,
usual.
all right?
Yes.
we got you.
Get through this
Okay,
way. Let's
very
Pretty
good.
put a
quickly.
time, let's put a quarter of, no later than
Okay,
quarter of.
works for me. We can do that. Ready?
Yep.
I move that we approve the all alcohol business license renewals for Burnham 1741 Manor Inc., Cherry Blossom, Sing Sing Inc., DBA Hantu, Kru Kanya Thai Restaurant, Stone's Public House, Hoposh Inc., DBA TJ Food and Spirits, the Warren Conference Center and Inn, Fusion Restaurant, the Oregon Club, Warren Conference Center, The Outside Tent, Erica's Restaurant, BTA Inc., DBA Ashland Ale House, Mexico City Taqueria, Los Cabos Mexican Grill and Cantina, Dr. Green's LLC, DBA Dr. Green's Indoor Golf.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None, hearing none.
So just one clarity, so these are license renewals for the year, the calendar year, January 1st through December 31st.
That is correct.
Right.
Okay. All right, motion to approve the all alcohol retail renewals for Main Street Wine and Spirits, Sunnyside Liquors, Clocktown Package Store, and Chay's Liquors.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? None? Motion passes.
A motion to approve the wine and malt beverage license renewals for Ashland Pizza Palace, Nick's Pizza and Seafood.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. 302.
A motion to approve the wine and malt retail license renewals for Easy Convenient Food Market, Inc., Wine Empire LLC, and Lucky Farms.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion passes. 302.
Motion to approve the club license renewals for Ashland Fish and Game Club, Inc., American Legion, and Ashland Memorial Associations, Inc., VFW number 2331.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. None, any opposed? None? Hearing none, motion passes. 302.
Motion to approve the common victualler license renewals for Marathon Deli, Sunnyside Cafe, Al-Rabi, DBA Samway and Pizza, American Legion, Ashland Fish and Game, Ashland Pizza Palace, Bodacious Bagel and Bakery Cafe, Burnham 1741 Manor Inc., Cherry Blossom, 33 All-American Diner, Dosa Temple, West Union Donuts, DBA Dunkin' Donuts, Ashland Donuts 2, DBA Dunkin' Donuts, Fusion, Mexico City Taqueria, Hanto, Kru Kanya Thai Restaurant, McDonald's, Los Cobos Mexican Grill and Cantina, Nick's Pizza and Seafood, Papagino's Union Street, Papagino's Pond Street, Pizza Mind and New York Deli, Burger City, Stone's Public House, Hopash Inc., DBA TJ Food and Spirits, the Warren Conference Center and Inn, Ashland Memorial Associates, Townhouse of Pizza, Honeydew Donuts, 236 Pond Street, the Oregon Club, Honeydew Donuts, 14 West Union Street, Erica's Restaurante, BTA Inc., DBA Ashland Ale House, Pizza Bella, Dairy Queen, Ashland Donuts 3 LLC, Dr. Green LLC, DBA Dr. Green's Indoor Golf.
Second.
All those in favor, say
Aye.
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 Opposed? None? Motion passes. 302.
Motion to approve the entertainment license renewal for Papagino's 355 Pond Street, Papagenos 372 Union Street, American Legion, Ashland Fish and Game, Ashland Memorial Association, VFW, Burnham 1742 Manor, Inc., Stone's Public House, Hoposh, Inc., DBA TJ Spirits, the Warren Conference Center, Ashland Ale House, Honto, and Fusion.
Do I have a
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No, hearing none, motion passes 302.
A motion to approve the Sunday entertainment license for Papagenos 355 Pond Street, Papagenos 372 Union Street, American Legion, Ashland Memorial Association, VFW, Burnham 1741 Manor, Inc., Honto, Stone's Public House, Hopash, Inc., DBA TJ Spirits, the Warren Conference Center, Ashland Ale House, and Fusion.
Second.
All those, motion's been made in second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion passes 302.
Motion to approve the amusement license renewal for Papagenos 355 Pond Street, Papagenos 372 Union Street, American Legion, and Hoposh, Inc., DBA TJ's Food and Spirit, Ashland Fish and Game, Dr. Green Indoor Golf.
Second.
Motion's been made in second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion passes 302.
Motion to approve the hobby shop renewal for Modelville Hobby.
Second.
All those in favor, motion's made in second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries 302.
Motion to approve the lodging license renewal for Jeremy Keefe, 37 Summer Street.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion passes 302.
Motion to approve the Class II license renewals for Ashland Auto Sales, A&B Auto Sales, Alberini Truck and Auto, Ashland Excavating Company, Inc., Ashland Auto Service Center, Inc., Kyromina Oil Corporation /XL, DGM Vehicles, Goodworks Auto Sales, Inc., Hollis Auto Body, Inc., Mendez, Inc., DBA JC Auto Sales, Middlesex Motors, Minucci Auto Body and Welding, Inc., MG Rabinowitz Corp. Auto Sales, Auto Source LLC, R&S Auto Sales, Stewart's Auto Sales, Tom's Ashland Auto, Inc., Town of Ashland, VC Motors LLC, New Beginnings Auto Service, Inc., BR Alberini, Universal Auto Repair and Sales, Inc., Middlesex Auto Reconditioning, Mike's Collision, Inc., and MX Motors, and PowerTune.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Motion passes 302.
Motion to approve the Class III license renewal for Ashland Used Auto Parts.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 302.
One more.
Motion to approve the billiards license renewal for Dr. Green's Indoor Golf.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 302. Great. Thank you. You don't, Steve, for that. You need to,
So
you don't
our
even need to take
yearly,
your breath. You're getting
We've got it
expert
down
at
to a
this.
science, right?
Less
Good
than.
job.
You beat, okay, very good. All right, so town manager appointments. So we have a minor appointment to be made here, huh?
Well, you know, this is one of those situations where it's a major appointment, but I'd like to treat it in a minor way at this point in time, if that makes sense.
Okay,
Yes.
I could see that.
You know, I have made the decision, and I've indicated to the public, in addition to you as well, that I will be appointing Keith Roby from captain to the position of fire chief of the Ashland Police Department.
Fire department.
Fire department.
Unless, did you,
Yeah, boy, I had that all worked out. So the town will be having a special ceremony, a pinning ceremony for Chief Roby on December 18th, Monday morning, here at 8:30. The public is invited. Certainly, you're invited, and will be a part of it. Hope people can attend. Unfortunately, Chief Boothby's last day is December 15th, so technically I do need to have somebody in the position of fire chief
When he
over the
retires.
weekend. So I do need to ask for, make this appointment and ask for a waiver of the 15-day waiting period.
Okay.
Do I hear a motion
Sure.
for that?
I move that we approve the town manager's appointment with certain, very much support of Keith Roby as the new fire chief and to waive the 15-day waiting period with regards to this appointment.
Do I get a second for that?
Second?
Before I ask for a vote, Susan, do you have anything, did you approve this whole thing?
I'm gonna recuse myself.
I do want to point out one more thing before we vote. It does say 150-day waiting
I do,
period.
I noticed that.
And we'll dispense.
Well, that's
with
why I
that.
didn't read what was written, so.
Exactly. All
A
right.
little excessive.
So we have a motion that's been made and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Motion passes 302. Congratulations to Keith Roby.
And again, I hope everybody is able to make it on the 18th.
Absolutely.
I plan on having that be a
On
very
my
happy,
calendar.
Yeah.
happy occasion.
Wouldn't miss it.
Sounds
Again,
great.
it'll be here.
Very good.
So,
Very good.
Now, is there anything being done for Scott? Any reception or anything that the
Or-
department
or
is
do
doing?
we not wanna talk about
or
it
the
publicly?
town is doing?
we're doing something like as a
Retirement
small
party?
thing, like a lunch.
Yeah, on, Monday the 11th.
Monday the
We're
11th?
gonna do a luncheon, and then obviously the 15th, he's gonna get an award,
Right.
cause he's got 30 years of
Yes,
service.
his length of service award for his
That'll
retirement.
be
Oh,
the
the Christmas,
15th
the
at
holiday
the
luncheon is
Yep.
the 15th, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And then there's a retirement party that's being discussed, but nothing's been set,
Okay.
but it won't be till after the
Probably
first of the
January,
year.
Okay,
Okay.
very
Yeah.
good.
Please
Okay.
keep us updated.
Super.
Absolutely.
Very nice.
Okay, great. All right, well, thank you, Michael. All right, so now in the town manager report time, so.
All right, you saved me a lot of time this time, so I'm gonna use it all up.
You've
No.
got till 9, you've got till 9 o'clock, buddy, so.
9
No.
o'clock.
You've got quite a list here.
All right, so first, under town manager report, I wanted to give you a recap of town meeting. First of all, I'll just say in general, I think we've been making strides towards having more positive and a collaborative environment at town meeting over the last couple of years, but I really think that kind of hit a new stride at the town meeting on November 14th. I thought just the discussion, the atmosphere was a lot more positive. And while people didn't necessarily agree, and they didn't necessarily see eye to eye, they did so respectfully. They had an opportunity to voice their opposition and their reasons why. And I just thought it made for a much better town meeting, a much better discussion. It's not just good politics, it's good policy when you can do things that way. It takes a lot of that, emotion out of it. We had a number of, I think, successes. First of all, financially, the fact, at any other town meeting when we didn't have some of these other things on it, the fact that financially we were able to achieve 10% of our general fund budget in our stabilization fund, a goal that we set only 4 years ago, is pretty remarkable and something that, took a collaborative effort. Again, we, are finally moving forward on Cadillac Paint after over 2 decades of talking about it. We finally have, everybody was like, how are we going to figure out getting the property? We put together a plan on how we're going to do it. We took the property and then appropriated the money to make this plan work. Certainly, without question, I think probably the thing that most people were there for, or the most people were there for that night, was the kindergarten vote. Again, a goal that Ashland has been talking about for, well over a decade. Yolanda, you were on the school committee, and, Robbie, I think you have some experience with people on the school committee.
Sure.
It's always been talked about, but we just never, as a community, put together a plan together to do it. So we were able to do that. And then finally, the purchase of the Oregon Road property, I think, is a great win.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just hope we can continue this trend.
And the key really is I think, the fact that we've been able to put ourselves on such a sound financial basis, and we're able to, at this point now, put more money towards capital projects.
Yep.
We're able to apply more money to the OPEB liability that we have. It just, that's the key to being able to manage all of these additional services and programs. So,
Right.
So I think it's, and I think it was reflected in the success of the town meeting vote and what we were able to achieve.
Right. We've dramatically changed the conversation, the types of conversations that we have. I'm not just talking about the attitude, but just the content. I mean, if you just think, a few short years ago, what we were focused on and what we were arguing about and what we would, spend all of our energies on. Remember, I likened it at the time to, the medieval scene where the cabbage
Monty-
truck comes
Monty
in. Yeah,
Python,
Monty Python.
yeah.
Where and everybody's like scrapping for a bite
Right.
of cabbage. And I think we've realized now that if we work together, we can actually put together something. Yeah, you don't like the
It's an interesting
analogy?
Python.
Yeah.
I'm getting a mental image now.
But that's what it was like in
Yeah.
those tri-board meetings. That's for sure.
That's right,
Um,
that's right.
Okay, so that's that. I'm sure
Well,
you had the same observation.
I would also encourage anybody, I've recently taken to spending more time up at the town forest, and the section that we purchased, it literally is right in the middle of that, of the town forest, and it's a beautiful location. The trails are great. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, but there's a very dedicated town forest committee working on a lot of those projects. So, but it's just a great site.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great. So,
Thanks for the update.
sure. Next on the list is, I want to discuss the technical assistance panel that is happening downtown. I've mentioned this before, but we were actually successful in receiving a grant from Mass Development for us to conduct this technical assistance panel through the Urban Land Institute. And I know it's called the Urban Land Institute, but they look at all types of planning issues, rural, suburban, and urban. And what we really wanted to focus on, and we're putting a lot of attention on downtown, and we're putting a lot of attention on economic development. But what we really need to start determining is what are the market forces that will drive economic development in the downtown area. You need to have this nice mix of retail, office, residential, and placemaking, open space type of opportunities to create that healthy mix that's going to work off of each other and not necessarily cancel each other out. So the technical assistance panel is made up of renowned architects, engineers, economic development specialists from different firms. They get together, they look at Ashland's problems, they look at Ashland's prior studies. We do stakeholder interviews, we do downtown walkthroughs, and they put together a report, and what it will do is we'll culminate in a presentation to the public on December 12th at 6 p.m. in the Board of Selectmen's meeting room. It will be televised on WACA. You'll see, basically how they came to the conclusions that they did and what their recommendations are moving forward.
What time is that, Michael?
6 p.m.
6 p.m.
So the work has already been going on, and this is now the presentation of that. And then once the presentation happens, how will that be implemented, and will the public have opportunity to then give feedback to what is presented on the 12th?
Yeah, I think it's probably more of a presentation of their findings.
Okay.
We need to take that and, they leave it in a way in previous technical assistance panels that I've seen, and, you can look at the reports online. They structure things to the extent that the community can still insert their goals and objectives and kind of make it helpful for them, right? So.
Yeah, I'm looking forward, and, we have, the train is such a challenge, the crossing is really, what are their ideas on how to handle that, I think would be.
Yeah, that's interesting. Some people actually see the train coming through downtown as an opportunity, and I think we're going to have to kind of
Embrace
think
that.
of it that way as well.
Try maybe somehow connecting to the station and
Right.
having that work in,
So that's, we hope people can join us. It's certainly, one part of our focus of downtown, which actually leads me to
And what time is that on the 12th?
6 p.m.
6 p.m.
6 p.m. December 12th, right here in the.
Right here in the
Selectmen's
BOS
meeting
room. Yeah.
And it will be televised, you said?
Will be televised, correct.
Okay.
So that leads me to the development update. I'll wait till JB's here Jen, to give a more complete picture of the development activity going on through town. But I want to just give you an update on 128 Main Street, which is currently before the planning board. The planning board has expressed some concerns with, I think, a little bit of the size of the project and how that complicates parking. And it seems like a lot of the majority of their focus is on the parking and, you know, the throughway of the site as well. But it's important to note that there's, you know, activity, interested, you know, the whole point you do this public sector stuff is to spur and increase private sector investment. And so we're seeing that at 128 Main Street. Oddly enough, we're seeing it also now at 98 to 100 Main Street, which is the yellow building across the street. We have a number of people have come into the office to express, you know, interest and ask some questions. There are a couple people who have taken a very serious look at that and are looking at potentially redeveloping that site, not necessarily knocking the building down. They're actually looking at keying it off of the historic structure
nice.
it is.
That's
So
good.
certainly,
That's
I
nice.
mean, if we can find a way to where we can do, like, you know, 21 Main Street was completed in, you know, a couple years ago. If we can have, you know, 3 buildings being renovated, redone in like a 3-year period, you know, that's quite a bit. And I mean, you see the attention that downtown's getting, and you see that people are starting to
See
take
the
notice.
activity, people are coming down here.
Yeah, I mean, people are coming down for events. You heard Mr. Ladd talk about, you know, one of the things that drew him here was, you know, he saw the increased attention focused to downtown and saw what it could be. And then again, now you're seeing this private sector investment into it. So I'm really excited about it.
On a side note, I have a question. You know, unfortunately, the Board of Health last night didn't have a quorum to meet, and yet they still had on their agenda some items that are directly related to economic development.
Right.
And so consequently, those could not be acted on. And, you know, we've got business people that are trying to do and initiate economic activity. So, and it's not a question of, you know, stuff happens, they didn't have a quorum, understood, but how do we coordinate this better? I mean, is there another meeting scheduled? Are there other options for some of this, some of the things that may come before the board rather than have the, let's say, the health director, the health agent, basically be in charge, approve, yes.
So in regards to your first question, my understanding is that they are looking at meeting next week to handle the annual waivers that they provide to local businesses. But as you mentioned, Steve, one of the things that was on their agenda was the Bagel Table, which is a new business that is looking at moving into the vacant place at 21 Main Street, providing this town that bagel and coffee place we've always talked about.
In downtown.
In downtown was on the agenda to get their waiver, and they couldn't do that last night. So it does have an impact on economic development. You know, it's not just.
And I'm not, you know, it's not a critique of the Board of Health. I don't want to present it that way. I just, you know, but how do we, you know, best, I guess, accommodate these situations that, and again, and operate in a collaborative way here, and so that we're all kind of pushing and moving these activities that I think we all want. It appears that we all want, right?
So I think, you know, the option of delegating some of that authority to the health agent would certainly be, you know, a possibility. Just like, you know, you could potentially delegate your authority for these licenses to, you know, myself. If you wanted to do that, you know, we can look at.
Oh, come on, but it's so much fun getting to read them all.
Then you can, next year, you have them all. Assuming you get reelected.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Michael, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So that's, you know, again, Jen will be able to provide a more up-to-date.
Okay, thanks. Riverwalk.
Give you an update on the Riverwalk project, another downtown thing that's happening. So I went on the sidewalk, myself, Beth Rosenblum, Jen, went with Green International, who was the engineers of the project. We walked the walk to look at the path, look at what vegetation might need to be removed, where we would need to add screening and vegetation. It was a much more detailed walk. We were pleased to see that we're actually going to be able to, for the most part, keep a 5-foot wide trail, stone dust trail, throughout the whole path. We thought there were going to be areas where we would have to narrow it down significantly.
Oh, good.
But, so we're happy about that. And again, it's a nice packed stone dust path through that 0.8 mile section. The other thing that we're focused on is the long span bridge. What type of bridge are we going to get? We have multi-span options where it sits on multiple pilings that would need to go into the river, and that presents some challenges. Or do we want to look at a single span option, which would be steel, and the variations of that we can look at. Steel is easier from a permitting standpoint. However, getting it here is going to be very, very, could be challenging. It's going to require the largest crane Ashland has ever seen to bring it here. We'll have to de-energize the wires, which sounds a lot more complicated than it really is, but there's some complications with that. So we're meeting with Green International and the Open Space and Recreation Committee on the 13th, and we'll hopefully move forward and make a decision on that.
So I was been thinking about that. You and I talked about this earlier in the week, and so it literally comes as one completed structure, or is it assembled on site and then put into place?
A single span structure, it will be a single piece.
But even if it's single piece, ultimately,
Yeah.
they can't assemble it in sections on site and then lift it in? Or
No,
is
they
that-
said the only way they could potentially break it up in half and do it, but it's getting it into the water where you can actually
Then connect it.
connect it is
Yeah.
is problematic.
Okay.
Whereas if you did a timber structure, which is a multi-span structure, what they plan on doing is actually building a piece, going out, putting the next piece
Right.
on,
Right,
and
and then
doing
you'd
it.
have pylons in the water to support it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We actually have, I think, 2 examples of those kind of bridges right now. One is by the train station at the corner of Pleasant and High in Corderville, yeah. And the other one is right by the mill pond. If you look, the dam.
The one that crosses?
That crosses
Steel
there,
one,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
yeah.
a steel,
Yeah.
yeah, that is a
Those,
steel
those are both
structure.
steel single spans, I think very similar to what's being
Yeah, but we're
considered.
going further, aren't we? I mean, what's the long span?
170 feet.
That
It's
is
huge.
long.
And
It's long.
It's over half a football field,
170
right?
feet.
170 feet, it's pretty long.
Yeah.
Jeez,
It is going, and one of the things we have to consider is this is gonna be probably one of the iconic structures in
Right.
town. It's gonna
Right.
be something that you can.
You're gonna see
you're gonna
as you drive
see
by through the
from
Mill Pond
very
area.
It's
170 feet.
170 feet, so we want it to be right.
Yeah.
But, just walking along the trail and talking about the possibilities and, just seeing some of the vistas that you're gonna be able to see of downtown really is exciting. It's,
Yeah.
I mean,
that's
it's
it.
really cool.
Yeah, good.
The, when the trail comes out at the, does it come out at the VFW or at the Marathon Park?
Marathon Park is
And
where.
is there thought about the crossing there and how that's gonna work?
We will probably do some kind of enhancements at the crossing
that would be
there,
good
just to kind
because-
of really complete that link
Right.
between the train station and downtown.
Exactly.
Right.
Cause you don't wanna come to the end and then have some issues where
Right.
it is busy and the people.
It is busy,
Mm.
so,
All right, good.
so again, it's just very exciting.
Very good.
Downtown streetscape or just downtown update, wanted to give you an update on the streetscape. BSC Group has put together, based on the feedback from the September forum and the co-urbanized comments, they've put together a couple of different iterations that we have looked at, iterations of the downtown street design that we can tweak a little bit and get ready for the next public presentation, which will be held in January, February of 2018. I can tell you they're looking at a lot of different things, a lot of different options, but it really boils down to, there's an option with bike lanes, designated bike lanes, that's currently being examined. There's one looking at, and how would that impact parking? Then there's, looking at if you keep the on-street parking, what can you do in terms of bike accommodations and wider sidewalks? So They've already made some, suggestions and drawings in relation to the intersections and how to make those safer, more pedestrian friendly, and then give you an opportunity to add some aesthetic elements like placemaking, benches. Maybe the Lions can, we can use one of the benches there, or some of the, but some of the greenery, some of the vegetation. So again, we're looking at January, February of 2018 for that next forum.
Yeah, great.
So.
People, questions or thoughts on that?
No, I think we had, the first forum was very well attended. I thought, one of the better forums that I've participated in. And then Yolanda and I had an opportunity to review some of these renderings and make some comments as well. So I think the next forum is going to be, much more specific, and I think residents will be able to really get a much better flavor of some, the big, the reality.
Yeah,
So.
it'll be taking a lot of the concepts and the ideas that was talked about and visualizing it, so you can actually
Right.
see what that looks like and what it looks like when you put it together.
Yeah.
So it's really cool.
I think one thing I want us to be aware of is, we made ourselves a complete streets community. And some of the ways we can get some funding to do things is to make sure we follow through on that commitment. But still make it work for our economy and for our businesses downtown. It's really finding that balance of making sure that we live through that and follow up with that complete streets idea of making our streets accessible to every mode of transportation, but finding that balance with our businesses in downtown. So
Especially as it's
we
a
just need to
commuter.
keep that in the forefront, I think, as we have these discussions.
Absolutely.
I just had two things. One is, are they incorporating the quiet zone into the thinking and how that fits into all this? And
So they're really looking more at Main Street and Front Street for the streetscape enhancements. The infrastructure work that's going to happen with relation to the quiet zone is really limited to
Just
Cherry
that.
Street.
they don't,
To Cherry
Oh.
Street, yeah, that's the intersection that they will be rebuilding. They are looking at it in the terms of, they're looking at the medians.
Get the medians, yeah.
That are going along Main Street. But most of the work that the quiet zone project specifically that we're looking at doing is related to the gates and things like
yeah,
that.
so you don't see it as a big planning impact on this particular project. It's just
No,
something that
not
we're
for
gonna do.
not for streetscapes. I think where they could present some problems is if you want to look at undergrounding the
Right.
utilities. Therefore, it might make sense to terminate at the railroad tracks. You're undergrounding and come back up. Or actually, they've had conversations with Eversource and the NBTA about actually coming up and just crossing over
And
the
go
tracks
back
and
down,
then
yeah.
going back down if
Mm.
you want to. So.
And the other thing is, what's your impressions of the proposed bike trail and where it's going and how that fits in? When you talked about complete streets and bike lanes, are they incorporating that, or they think it's kind of a plan they can work with, or does it have much of an impact, or not?
So, considering they're looking
the
mainly
trail.
at Main and Front,
Yeah, main and
Trail's not
front,
going
so
there.
yeah,
not
it's
really
not really
part
going
of
there. But, you could spur off
Well,
of
the
that.
thing is, in some ways, they should probably, if they're thinking about how to have bike lanes in downtown, then they should look at maybe that the route that's currently in the bike plan is maybe not the best route. Maybe they've got some other ideas.
Right.
So it'd be good if they looked at it and said, because if you have a bike or a multi-use trail going to a certain place, maybe that affects, maybe you don't need bike lanes right in front of
Yeah.
town hall, or, you know what I'm saying? So they should
Right.
think about that.
Well, we did talk about that actually, about whether, it may or may not be the right thing to have bike lanes in Main Street. That's certainly something to
they-
consider, but we also, right from the beginning, when we met with the consultants, we did talk about, even though their focus is on Main Street and Front Street, Cherry Street intersection, we did talk about how do you connect the train station,
Yeah.
through Pleasant. So, those are certainly things that are important. I think we need to, whether it's through, the widened sidewalks all the way down to the train station, but how do we best
Yeah, and then
connect those?
maybe if you do it in a certain way, maybe you can incorporate, maybe there's an alternative.
Right.
the bike trail
Right.
there, so anyway.
Just a couple of interesting observations from the studies that they have done so far. Our parking utilization currently is only 60% of downtown parking is utilized on average. We talk about a parking problem, 60% is being utilized. So there's a disconnect there. And then also some of the traffic calming and queuing
Yeah, that was interesting how
scenarios.
they were projecting that and how you could expand certain parts of it to make it easier and turning. So that was, it'll be interesting to get into that further and to see the reaction from the public when they see it.
So, okay. Now something not downtown related. I just wanted to give you notice that I've extended the town's Community Choice Power program. It was expiring. We went out and looked at different providers again because Eversource's basic service rate was going to jump up to 13.1 cents. And we were able to secure through Constellation a price of 12.99 cents. So that's only for a 6-month period, but again, we'll be providing power, an opportunity for people to purchase power at less than Eversource's basic rate still. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Very good. That's been, how long, it's been in fact almost 2 years now, right?
Yeah.
It's been that long, so.
Yeah.
We went off
seems
for a
to be
year,
working
didn't we?
out.
We went off for a year and then went back on,
Yeah.
and it's been good for, I don't have the figure in front of me, but I want to say that in 1 year, we had saved ratepayers over $500,000, over $500,000 over that year. Total.
Very good.
Sounds good.
Yeah, great.
And finally, I just wanted to let you know that the employee recognition lunch is going to be happening on December 15th. It's a Friday. We'll be having it at the community center. That's our opportunity to recognize employees for their years of service here of varying degrees. I thought I was going to get
26 of them this year.
we have 26 people being recognized this year.
Wow.
I thought I was going to get a 5-year award, but it looks like
Gotta wait.
I have to wait.
It hasn't been full 5 years yet.
Nope.
Well, I
Not
was
till
going to
May.
hit 5 years in May, and I was like,
Gotta wait your turn, man.
no kidding.
What are the 26 people, what are the kind of years? Is
Any
it
big
5,
ones?
10, 15,
We've got a
20?
We have a 40, we have a
40.
30,
Really?
40, who
Wow.
has 40?
June.
June.
Oh, wow.
June gets an award every year.
Well, when you get
And
up
she
to like
deserves
35
it.
years,
Yeah,
you
she does
should
deserve
get
it.
an
And she
award.
deserves it.
40 years. So 40, we should bring her in here one time.
So,
Yeah, we have 4 5s, 3 10s, a bunch of 15s,
That's great.
3 20s,
Wow.
3 30s, and a 40.
3
30s and a 40.
3:30.
Can we plan on reviewing, because I'm not available on the 15th, can we plan on at least reviewing that list at our meeting in January
that sounds
to
a good
recognize
idea.
those
Sure.
people? I think,
Yeah.
because, they get recognized at the luncheon, but it would be great to
Yeah, that's a great
publicly
idea.
recognize
Yeah,
those
yeah.
people at one of our meetings. I mean, they don't have to come, but if we could just at least read their names.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
it'd be good. It'd be good.
So the luncheon it starts 11
it's
typically?
11, right, Susan?
Yes.
11 to
And
1
do we need to
basically?
Will you go and
request
represent us, Steve?
I go every year.
I know you
It's
do,
great.
but.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Joe usually goes
Joe,
too.
yeah, I've gone a
Yeah.
couple, but
Yeah.
I can't this year, so.
And one thing I would ask is, we've kind of gotten out of the habit of this, is that we actually need funds from the Selectmen's Gift account
Okay.
to do this. So I would request
to?
$200 from.
I
the
move that we
Selectmen's-
approve up to what did you say, more?
200?
No, I'd like 2,000.
Because of all the awards?
Yeah, and just then it gives us the ability, when other things come up, we have like Scott's going away party, if we have funds for things.
Okay, 2,000.
I move that we approve up
have
to
2,000? Ask
2,000.
Steve.
We do, we do.
Yeah, we do.
Up
but-
to $2,000 from the Selectmen's Gift account to put toward the employee luncheon recognition and
Related.
retirement
Well, let's
and
just,
related.
before we complete that motion, typically, we've given the town manager discretionary funds, so
Correct.
can we just put it into,
Okay,
that
we can do it that way.
discretionary
Sure,
bucket for the
discretionary
town
bucket.
manager, all right?
Up to $2,000 for discretionary funds for the town manager.
Perfect, thank you.
Second.
All
And
those, so we have a
Susan.
motion that's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any Opposed?
That's the good stuff we
Motion
can do.
carries 302. All right.
Very good.
You're in charge, Michael.
Yeah.
Thanks. So-
Okay.
And that's, I mean, that's it. I'm sure you're gonna talk about the tree lighting and illuminate Ashland in your
Yeah.
board report,
Yep.
so.
Well,
Yep.
let's start on that note. Let's start with Yolanda for the board
Okay.
reports.
First, I'd like to thank people who have submitted their talent bank forms for the different appointments. I also would, recommend that if you're interested in a committee, go to that committee's meetings, meet the people, talk to the people, because we do take the recommendations from the committees as to who we appoint. Rather than having everyone come here and us try to meet everybody, we do look to the committees to help us make those appointments. I would also like to say thanks to everyone who came out to town meeting, as was said in the town manager's report. I think it was really great to see so many people part of our democratic process, because we are a town meeting form of government. The more people that can be involved, the better. And the other thing I would say is please stay involved, keep participating, come to our meetings, come to any meetings that are going on, come to forums, give us your feedback, and hopefully we'll see you again at our next town meetings. Congrats to the Ashland Day Committee and all those who did a great tree lighting. I was not able to go, but I heard a lot of good things that was really positive. There were some businesses open supporting it, Needham Bank, the Reiki Wellness, the great little gift shop there. So congratulations to everyone. I will be attending the Regional Selectmen meeting tomorrow night. I don't know who else is going, but I know I am going. I'm also going to be going to see Gate 19 by Ashland Community Theater, which is happening this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night at their new home at the VFW. They've expanded the stage. They've done some real work. Congrats to the VFW on the work that they're doing there, and Kim from Marconi's. That it should look really good. They've done some really nice work there. And as this is our last public meeting, I would like to say Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, and Happy New Year to everyone. Have a wonderful holiday season, however you celebrate. And that's it.
Very good. So my report consists of, this evening, I just acknowledge the Friends of the Council on Aging hosted the senior holiday party this evening, and Michael and I were able to stop in and say hi to all the seniors, and service by the Greater Ashland Lions, the Purple Ladies, so it was well done. To piggyback on the holiday lighting, it was probably the best attended holiday lighting that I've attended. I did meet Michael down there. It was a great crew. There was a choir for the first time, very nice.
Well, first time in a long time.
Yeah,
There've
the
been-
Ashland Day Committee
There've been people before, but.
the Ashland Day Committee did a great job, and so kudos to them. This Saturday, starting at 4:30, is Illuminate Ashland. It's a new event, a new downtown event. It's a collaboration between Anne Marie's Dance Center and Arts Ashland Alliance, and it's a walk through the downtown corridor. Starts at the Dance Center on Cherry Street, heads over to the Corner Spot. From the Corner Spot goes to the Historical Society, back to Purple Ink Building, then to Town Hall, then to Needham Bank, to Erica's Public Library, Erica's Restaurant, and then to Stone's, and then circles back to the community gardens. It's going to incorporate luminaires, and there'll be music in certain venues. There'll be some drinks. There'll be a choir on the steps of Town Hall.
Oh, boy.
So hopefully the weather is cooperative, but it should be a really nice event, and just a nice downtown stroll.
Great.
So
Is there a schedule somewhere so that if you don't make it to the dance center, that you know where things are happening, so
there
you can
is
stop in?
on Anne Marie's Dance Center. There is a link to. There's a subsection to the Illuminate Ashland event, and there's
Okay.
a schedule there. So,
Great.
so that's this Saturday at 4:30. It starts.
And we, that was happy to support that through our.
Yeah, through our grant
gift fund.
process.
Yes,
Yeah,
yep.
very good. Yes.
So, also, I know we mentioned we've got an event with the Urban Land Institute on the 12th,
Yep.
December the 12th. There's also the menorah lighting is on the 12th. It
Oh,
starts at
that's right.
6:15 over at Montenegro Square, and so that's happening. And there's still plenty of Christmas trees down at the Ashland Lions lot over on 126. We'll be there, the Lions will be there. We actually have 4 members of the Ashland Lions sitting here tonight.
That's right.
So,
Like a
Have-
But,
conspiracy.
I know you
don't
did some selling. I did some selling the other night. Rob, have you done your selling yet?
I've done 4 shifts.
Wow, good for you.
so
I don't
it's.
sell any trees, but
No?
It's a lot of fun, and,
is.
you know, the whole point is it goes to charities. So, you know, come down and support the community through purchasing a tree at the Lions, from the Ashland Lions. And lastly, again, it's our last meeting until January, so best wishes for a healthy and happy holiday season, and have a great new year, a safe new year, and we'll see you when we see you.
Okay, well, thank you. I just, I just have 2 items. One is, I was reading about Natick hiring as a sustainability officer, and I know we haven't had one since Phil moved on, and we lost the grant, but I was just thinking of this, and I know you're going to the regional thing tomorrow. I just, it strikes me as this is a potential regional kind of position.
Yep.
I
Like
can
if
bring it up.
Natick is probably 3 times our size, so maybe 1 or 2 other towns we got together with, maybe we could reinstitute something like that.
Good point.
Just a thought,
Sure.
so.
Similar to what we do with some of our other
Yeah,
smaller.
so, and I know you were involved in that, the fire regionalization
Yeah.
effort, so.
Sure.
The other thing I did want to mention, I went to the Thanksgiving football game, Ashland versus Hopkins, very traditional, and that was one of the greatest high school games I've ever seen. That was, like, if people were there, we almost pulled, Hopkins was heavily favored, and those last few minutes when we were driving 80 yards down the field in the last few minutes, but just didn't quite do it, but it was a great, so I wanted to congratulate the team on that. It was a great
They
game.
had a great season this
Yeah,
year, too.
Yeah, so that was good. And then the very next day, that team was there to help us unload the Christmas trees at the,
Yep.
at the Lions
Lions.
lot. And it's just so much fun being there with them, because they have a great time with dragging, throwing the trees around, and I'm not handling them very carefully.
Gently moving the
and
trees.
placing them carefully, but, they were
No
there.
wonder you don't sell any trees.
No, it'll be sold out probably this very short.
Very, yeah.
It's a very nice, but, it's great to see the kids there, and Coach McKay, congratulate him for getting them out. The next day after Thanksgiving, they're there Friday morning. These are
Yep.
high school kids, and they're there early in the morning too. So I wanted to thank them for that. And so that's, and as others have said, so, I'm sure, I just wanted to pass on from Carl, and Joe couldn't be here tonight, that, best wishes for the season, and Happy New Year. And we'll see you all in the new year.
If
So,
not before, at
if
some
not
great
before.
event.
Yeah, at another event, yeah. Thank you. So.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.